Hello everyone, it's Sharon. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm taking the mystery out of BurdaStyle Magazine Sewing Patterns. Perhaps you've seen the magazine and you're interested, or you've seen people sew items from the magazine and you're interested, and then you realize you have to deal with this. You take one look at this and you say, no, 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 I'm not going to do it. I have been sewing from the BurdaStyle sewing magazines for a long time. And today I will share with you the method that I use to trace the patterns. I think when we're done, you'll realize it's not as intimidating as you might think. I have the March 2022 magazine right here. If you've never seen the inside of a magazine, I will walk you through what that looks like. And I've also chosen the pattern that I wish to sew, and that's the design that we're going to trace out today. You're going to need tracing paper. The paper that I use, let's see if I can do this without making a lot of noise. It's an art tracing paper that I found at an art supply store years ago. I've also found it on Amazon. I'll leave that link in the description box below in case you're interested in trying it out. I have the wide width. This is 36 inches wide. Let's see if I can grab the other one there. I also have it in the 24 inches. I like it in the different widths because it depends on the pattern pieces that I'm tracing. What I like about this is that the paper is see-through enough that I can see the lines to trace, but it's heavy enough that it doesn't rip easily. And I can also, if I wanted to, cut out the pieces and pin it together to do a tissue fit. I have another option that I've used if I run out of paper, and that is parchment paper. I keep this on hand in my baking supplies, and you can use this also. As you can see, it's quite narrow, so you would need to tape that together if you were tracing a larger pattern piece. You will want some rulers to help you trace accurately. I like to use a straight edge ruler. I like to use one that has a curve to it. And then for adding my seam allowances, I like to use this handy dandy little ruler. Let me get rid of those. The reason I like this for seam allowances is this is 5/8 inch wide. It's really easy to add those seam allowances. One other thing that you will need is some type of a pen or a pencil to trace. I like two different colors. I like to use these little fine tip markers, two different colors. The reason I do that is I use one to trace out the pattern line. I use another color to add the seam allowance. That way I could tell easily that I have included seam allowances because maybe in the past I may have forgotten to add a seam allowance and I may have sewn a garment and it may have been too small. And that's why I use two different colors so that I can easily, and that's why I do that. It's just a reminder to me that I added seam allowances. When you receive the magazine, you'll notice as you go through it, you will see all styles at a glance to begin with. And then you start flipping through. They have some fashion trends in this one. And you'll start seeing the patterns that are available. You'll see the model and you'll see the line drawing of the garment you want to sew. We'll just flip through this quickly so you can see some of the garments available. Each magazine will have one item that they choose that they give you a mini sewing lesson. And this one is a step-by-step sewing lesson, much more detail than most of the pattern instructions in the magazine. Continuing on. Most of them have a couple kids items available. You can see we've got shirts and dresses and jackets, vests. There's usually a craft type project in here. And then we get into the pattern instructions. You'll have a page here. This is in every single one of them. It talks about the pattern sheet, where to find your pattern, how to trace it, and just some symbols on the patterns. Here are all of the line drawings at a glance. Each design will also include 1 to 4 dots, and that tells you how easy or challenging the design project is. I have already made a decision which one that I wish to sew. I would like to sew this jacket. It's a blouson jacket. They don't give you a lot of description. You'll see I've got the line drawing again. And then it says fabrics and notions. So that tells me just at a glance that this is going to be a cotton fabric and I'm going to need a zipper and elastic. So I look at this. It's blouson jacket 101, available in sizes 36 to 44, and there are 2 dots. That is the level of ease for sewing. So I'm going to look for 101. So I'm going back to all styles at a glance. That same information is right here. It's on page 41 of the magazine if I want to look at the model number. It's available in sizes 36 to 44. I'm going to go through and look for jacket 101. Now, if you don't know what size to sew for a BurdaStyle magazine, here is your size chart over here. It is in centimeters and in inches to make it easier for you to determine what size you need. The patterns in this magazine are designed for a height of 5 foot 6 inches. There's usually one in each magazine that is for a tall, which is a 5 foot 9 inch, and for a short size, which is a 5 foot 3 inch. You're going to look here and you're going to look at your bust, waist, and hip. They also provide arm length and shoulder width for you. I know when I sew garments, I start with a size 40 for tops. And this is a 40, UK size 14, US size 10. The bust for size 40 is 92 centimeters, and they say 363 inches, which is not correct. I believe it is supposed to be 36.3 inches. One thing that the magazine does not provide for you is the amount of wearing ease or design ease. So you can measure your pattern when it is flat after you've traced it out to determine the amount of ease, or you can sew up a test garment to see where it fits. I do believe they are drafted for a C cup. The other information that is available in the sewing instructions, you're going to find the back length, which in this case is 23 inches. It has 7/8 inch sleeves. The pattern overview. This is where you're going to find the pattern to trace it. In this case, it's the black pattern line and it is on sheet A, and it will be pattern pieces 1 through 7. I will show you that in a moment. Each size has a different type of line available. That's going to be important to know as you start tracing this out. It will show you each pattern piece that you are going to trace. It will also show you the grain line, the markings, things that you need to know as you construct this. It will also tell you recommended fabric. In this case, lightweight jacket fabrics with some body. The original fabric was a cotton blend. It tells me how much fabric I'm going to need. And then it will also tell me any notions I'm going to need. It then tells you what pattern pieces you're going to trace out and how many you will cut of each. Here's your layout. Here are the construction steps. It is helpful to have some sewing knowledge or a sewing book available to you or YouTube videos that can help you with the construction if you aren't as experienced of a sewer. I do want to point out one thing. Some patterns, for example, dress number 104, which is on page 28, that's this dress here. When you are tracing the pieces for that one, you'll see that the pieces you're going to trace are just the bodice and sleeve and facing pieces. That's because sometimes BurdaStyle, especially if it's just a rectangle, they will just give you the dimensions to cut. And those are located right here. In each BurdaStyle magazine, you will see this. And this, I think, is what makes people nervous. Trust me, once you get it down, it's actually pretty easy to trace a pattern. If none of the patterns have been traced, this will be stapled still inside the magazine. You can carefully just pull. And I say carefully because if you're not careful and you rip this where the staples are, you'll end up ripping part of the pattern that you're going to trace. And then you're just going to unfold this completely. Here is side B unfolded. Here is side A unfolded. Here is side D unfolded. And here is side C unfolded. For the pattern we're going to trace, we want sheet A, black pattern lines, pieces 1 through 7. On each pattern sheet, there are numbers printed at the bottom. They're printed in different colors, which correspond to the pattern line that you're going to trace. So I'm looking for the black numbers 1 through 7. Wherever you see that number, if you go straight up, you will find the corresponding pattern piece. In this case, I've located number 5. I slide my fingers straight up. I see number 5, and I'm showing you the outline of the pattern piece. You may find it helpful to locate each number and each corresponding pattern piece before you place your tracing paper on there and begin to trace. It's time to trace out your pattern pieces. Go ahead and locate the first piece you want to trace. In this case, it's going to be number 7. And then I'm going to take my tracing paper and I'm going to lay it over the pattern piece. Now remember, you've already outlined it with your fingers, so you have a general idea where it is, and you want tracing paper that you can see through. And you're going to trace the black line in the size that you identified earlier. Just continue to trace that.
We're going to add seam allowance when we're done. You may find it helpful to keep that pattern overview next to you just to verify you're tracing the pattern piece correctly. Once you're done tracing it, you are going to add all of those markings, the numbers, the grain line, gather lines, all of those. And then I like to mark what the pattern is, what magazine it came out of, and what size I traced. I find that information helpful when I come back to it in the future. These patterns do not include seam allowances, usually 5/8 inch, and it will also tell you what the hem allowance is. I like to add the seam allowances to my pattern piece. You can put this pattern piece on your fabric and trace out seam allowances, and you do not have to use the 5/8 inch seam allowance if that is not your preference. I like to just stick with 5/8. It's what I'm most familiar with. I'm using a tool. This green ruler is 5/8 inch wide. I found this ruler on Etsy or eBay. I don't remember for sure. I'll leave the link in the description box below, but it makes tracing the seam allowance very, very simple. Continue adding seam allowance and then your hem allowance and cut your pattern piece out. Continue to do that for every pattern piece included in the design you have chosen. But how do you add seam allowances if you do not have this handy dandy little ruler? This is what I used to do before I purchased that ruler. Just take another ruler, anyone works. I like to use my little seam gauge. I put it at 5/8 inch and then I place that along the line that I have traced. Taking my pen, I just put a little mark and I just slide it down all the way around the pattern piece. You'll see that I'm not doing a complete line, and that's okay. Whoops, missed it there. Just continue going. Make sure you don't bump this if you're using the seam gauge so that you don't add a narrower seam allowance than you planned. Just going all the way around. All the way, all the way, all the way. And that actually is enough. I'm not doing this because this is a fold. That is enough for me to cut it out and know that I've gotten a seam allowance. Now here in the corner, I might want to add something right there just to make sure I cut that corner correctly. Oops, and I bumped it. There.
Now that wasn't so bad, was it? If there's a tip that I missed, please leave it in the comments below so that we can all learn something new together. Until I see you in the next video, I hope you have a blessed day and happy sewing.